Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms. These are Charter Moms Chats, and today we have a new guest blog post about um, Grace Christian School in San Antonio. And so if you go to schartermoms.com, you'll see this amazing guest post because it has parent perspectives and student stories and teacher tales all in one post. So it gives you a great perspectives all about Grace Christian School. But so to talk about Grace Christian School, we have one of the guest authors with us. So Stephen Moody is a firefighter with the city of San Antonio, and he has his daughter MacKenzie is 6 years old, and she's a first grade student at Grace Christian School. So you can read his blog post on the website, but we're lucky we get to have a real conversation with him. And Stephen, thank you so much for joining me on Charter Moms Chats.
Thanks for having us on here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So can you tell me about your family, like you, your wife, and MacKenzie, who's at Grace Christian?
So my wife her name is Jackie, and we have MacKenzie. We have another daughter named Mina, have an older daughter named Maggie. And so I think kind of the backstory of this is important, is kind of how we got into the school thing and why we got to where we're at. And so, like with me, I was a public school kid, went to Southwest High School, pretty much did not like school at all, ever. It was not something that I enjoyed, struggled a lot with algebra and stuff like that. But some of the other stuff just seemed like it was awful easy and just kind of blew through it. And at the end of the day, that was one of the things I didn't want my kids to have, where they just did not even want to go to class. And so my oldest daughter, we struggled back and forth between public school, homeschooling. My 9-year-old just kind of fits right into the groove of the homeschool. She does not like schedules. She's kind of like her dad. Dad is like, get home at 5 o'clock on Friday and say, hey, you know what? Pack your bags up. We're going to go to the beach. But in contrast to that is my wife, who likes to plan things out like 3-4 years in advance if she can. So she's a very, very good about planning things, having it all done. With school, she was homeschooled from the time she was in kindergarten all the way through. Went to UIW, completed a master's degree in 4 years total, and with a perfect GPA. I, on the other hand, was on a 10-year plan for an English degree and just struggled at UTSA all the way through it. Just didn't like to be there. Was not getting what I needed, I think, at the end of the day. And so between the two of it was just kind of hard. And so my 9-year-old Mina is just all about the chaos of life, and she just goes along doing that without any issues. MacKenzie, on the other hand, is really like her mom, and she needs a schedule. She is very emotional like her dad. We have big emotions. And so with MacKenzie, it was kind of trying to find a place where it didn't really stifle her spirit, but yet she had the schedule that she needed, and she knew, okay, at this time I'm going to have lunch, at this time I'm going to have reading, at this time I'm going to, and so that worked perfectly for her. And so as we got into this, it was trying to figure out what was going to work best for the kid. And I would say of all my children, MacKenzie was the one that it was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because she is just really kind of a free spirit and wants to do her thing, but yet you also have this whole very organized side to her that dad doesn't understand. And so I think that as we started searching for different schools, it really kind of made it tough, trying to figure out where we're going to put her. And so I think that all our kids are different every time. And it's like, okay, where are we going to find what fits for which kid? And my 9-year-old she thinks school is really cool and she likes it up there and she likes the people, but it's like, for her, it's just too structured. But yet for MacKenzie, she just loves every minute of it. So that's kind of it for the family and how that all goes.
Yeah, well, that's I just want to reflect back some of the points you made, and because I think other families can identify with this too. Like, every child, like, yes, they're growing up in the same house, but they're going to be so unique. And the fact that you know and understand your kids so well, and you can find you're on a mission to find the right setting for them. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it was MacKenzie, of all my kids, is my most volatile. It's just really, the emotions are so big, and just she cares about people and she likes people. And so if she gets upset about stuff, it's really big upset. And it's kind of neat to see the contrast, because that's dad in a nutshell. And then, like I said, the organized side is all mama. And so to see that side of her is kind of neat from time to time. And it's with her, it's just this big, she's got a hunger for knowledge. MacKenzie wants to learn every minute of every day. And so it kind of makes it hard for dad, because dad is just kind of a scatterbrain that's all over, and it's like trying to figure out how to do things with her. And I think part of it with her too is she was one of the COVID kids. And so she had never really been around other people. We hadn't had a whole lot of interaction. She went to a babysitter that had 2 kids of her own, and that she was pretty much the only kid there. So she had no interaction with other kids. And so it's kind of important that we get that interaction. But at the same time, we realized that if I go and put her in a school with 1,000 kids, she's going to flip out. And so it was, Grace just ended up being the right place at the right time for the right kid. And so,
yeah, you mentioned in the blog post about how much the other students at Grace bring to the culture, right? That your daughter was feeling anxious, and that an older student comforted her, right? How did that story go?
It's really, it was, she was having a hard time. You know, she's never been away from mom and dad. I got hurt and ended up really sick for about 3 years, right in the middle of when she was, 2 to 5, where she started school. And so we didn't go a whole lot of places, didn't spend a whole lot of time outside of the house. And she just didn't have that interaction. And so when we got ready to take her there, she just lost it. And like I said earlier, big emotions. And so the big emotions came out. And it happened for a couple of days in a row. And then all of a sudden, my wife was dropping her off one morning on the way to work, and she lost it. In chapel, was trying to run out of the building. And here comes this blonde young lady, my wife says, and just comes across the room and says, "MacKenzie," and gets her attention and picks her up and holds her. And then she tells my wife, "Just go on and go. We got it." And that went the rest of the school year. When there was any type of issue, this young lady would come and take care of it, and really got to see the kind of what Grace is all about with her, because MacKenzie started to have a few little issues, and she did some stuff that was kind of mean to some other kids. And this young lady pulled her aside and was like, "Hey, that's not how we're going to do things." And, as we got to talking to her in different functions and stuff, she said, what I noticed on day one with MacKenzie was she was a lot like I was when I was her age. I don't want her to go down some of the same paths I went down. And so it was really, for me, it was pretty touching to see that here's a teenager that normally would not give the time of day to anybody in the outside world, but yet she's spending all her time with this little one and mentoring her and just making sure that she stays out of trouble and stays on the straight and narrow. And it was really neat to see, and to see how much MacKenzie thinks about her now, that was one of the people she was excited to go see on the first day of school, is like, okay, I'm ready to go see her. And so I think that's kind of the Grace deal in a nutshell, is the kids really seem to treat each other with a lot of love and respect. And that was one of the things that kind of drew me in right away, is I just, with my profession and the things that I've seen, I don't want my kid to see some of the ugliness that I've seen out of the world. And so being there is just kind of, she's not necessarily sheltered. And that was one of the things that was important to me, is that I not shelter her completely where she doesn't understand what the world is, but put her and show her how she's supposed to act in the world. And so that's where we ended up with where we're at. The teachers have been great that way, and just trying to kind of encourage her and get her to do things. And it's, I go up there and I'll hang out doing different things and see different things. And the kids are wild, right? The kids are wild. That's what they're going to do. They're going to run around. They're going to play. They're going to do all these things. But if I go to the public school here or in San Antonio, I hear kids cussing. I hear all the stuff going on. And I have never heard that one time at Grace when I was up there. And so it's just a different mindset of the kids that are there and the parents that are there, that they want something different for their kids. And so that was kind of one of the biggest selling points for me, is when we went up there to actually tour the school the first time. We walked through some of the classrooms, and I mean, as we walked in the room, the kids were greeting us, and it was just a totally different perspective than what I would normally see anyplace else. So that was kind of that was a big thing to me. It was a big thing to the wife. And so
it sounds like getting to see the campus had a big impact on you. So you mentioned in the post like how you first heard about it, and then how you were able to like connect with an actual family from Grace Christian.
Yeah, so we had been looking, and my wife sent me a list earlier of all the schools she had on her list, and it was just astronomical. And as we went through those schools kind of one by one, it was like everything had something that just didn't seem like it was going to fit. It was just something was not going to work for MacKenzie. And Grace was not on the list initially, and then she did a Google search and it popped up, and she ended up coming to the SA Charter Moms page, and I think she asked a question about, has anybody ever done this? Well, automatically one of the families reached out to her and was like, hey, this is what's going on. Our kids have gone there. They've gone on to college. They're doing great in college. And so she came home that night and told me, she said, hey, I think this place may work. This is what I found out so far. You want me to schedule an appointment? Yeah, schedule. Let's go up there and meet. And so we ended up going up. Mrs. Farmer ended up being the one to kind of walk us around and show us stuff. And it was in session. And so I asked her, is there any way we can go in one of the classrooms? I just kind of want to see how the kids react. And so she took us right in. We saw how the kids were acting, saw how the teachers were acting. Didn't seem to throw anybody off, that there was a little chaos walking into the classroom. And that was important to me too, that I needed MacKenzie to be able to learn to handle and just roll with the punches. And so when we went in there, that's what they did. The kids didn't get out of hand. They didn't go crazy. They didn't get distracted, but everybody was polite, did what they're supposed to do. And so I literally knew within 5 minutes of walking in the door, this is going to work. And we asked Mrs. Farmer some pretty tough questions about kind of how things were handled and what they did and what they expected of the kids. And she didn't hesitate. It was just, she had it down. She knew what she wanted done. She knew how she wanted the kids to be. And when we walked out, my wife is very much, I want to think about things, and I am very much that way. So like my wife will joke sometimes that I went to buy a TV one time and it took me 4 months to decide which TV I was going to buy. And so we walk out of the deal and I tell her, this is it. This is where I think she needs to go. And my wife is kind of looking at me like excuse me, you don't make decisions that way. And I was like, it just fits. It feels right. I like the people here. And so we talked to her, got her signed up. And but I mean, that school visit was the biggest selling point. I mean, we had the interaction with the other parents that had kids there, but a job, I walk in schools all the time, and I didn't see what I saw that day. And that's what I had always wanted to see, was just, hey, life's full of distractions, life's full of chaos. I need a place that teaches and shows them how to act normal and not get out of place and get upset when things change. And by seeing that, for me, was the biggest selling point. And then my wife being the homeschool, when she found out they used the Abeka stuff for the curriculum, she's like, hey, that's good stuff. That's what we need to do. And so that was maybe her biggest selling point, was knowing what they use on the curriculum side. And for me, it was like, what are they teaching these kids and how to act in the real world? And so,
yeah. Well, I want to react. There's some really great things about your kind of your school search story that I think other families can learn from. So, first of all, thank you for using the Charter Moms discussion group. I'm really proud of it and how helpful the parents are to other parents. So I'm glad that helped. But also, you talked about your wife making a long list. I think that's an important step. But then somehow you have to narrow it down, right? I think going on a school tour, asking lots of questions, going when you can actually see kids in the classroom and see what the dynamic is, like how do the teachers interact with the students, how do students handle interruptions. You can really learn a lot from that. So I'm glad you give a really good example of like how to get the most out of a school tour. And then also like talking about, I think that's very relatable about being somebody who is slow to make decisions. My husband and I are both like that. But like the fact that you had such a good feeling about the people you met, and that you just walked away from it with a feeling of like, we belong here. This is the right place for MacKenzie. Like it's really important to listen to those feelings.
it's hard for me because as my job shows me kind of the worst of the world sometimes. And so going in there, and it just had a really weird feel. It's almost like you'd known these people, like they were your people, and we knew that right away. And so it's just been, we fit right in from the get-go, all of us, and it's really been a good experience for all of us. And MacKenzie's especially, like we were doing a four-day week last year, And she right away at the end of the school year is like, look, next year I want to go 5 days. I'm like, well, hold on, you hang out with dad on Fridays, like, and she goes, no, I need to go to school. And so it's to see that side of her is a good thing, that she enjoys it that much. And just in contrast to how I felt all the time, was just like, I just did not want to go. And so to see that out of her, and she's a lot like dad. So it was kind of, that was my fear early on, was we're going to struggle with school. And it's not been a struggle at all for her. She really enjoys it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, school shouldn't be the struggle if you find the right environment. It's just that we're all too conditioned to just settling for, whatever is the typical thing to do. And to encourage for you guys to, think outside the box and a lot of driving, right? So how
a
does that
lot.
work?
It's about 45 minutes on a good morning to get her to school. So we're coming pretty good way south of town. And my wife works in town, so that helps a little bit, that she's going to kind of go right by there on the way. And that was sort of one of the things too, that just, okay, some of the other schools have been way out of the way, and it's like, okay, we'll do it if we have to do it. They just didn't fit. And then it ended up being the one that fit was literally 2 blocks out of the way. So it worked perfect.
Yeah. And the location, it's on Callahan, so it's kind of
On,
near the 410, I-10.
yeah, Callahan Road off of I-10. There's a Whole Foods right there, and it's kind of down Las Palapas, and it's down that way back towards Vance Jackson. So
Yeah, yeah. So some families may not be able to drive as far as y'all do, but yeah. So for folks know, it's on, so it's sort of on the northwest side of town, but not too far from downtown.
yeah, not too far.
Yeah, yeah. Well, are there more things? I know that, so MacKenzie, she's only in first grade, and so academics aren't as big a deal at that age. It's more learning to get along in the classroom and things. But you said she has a real
Well,
thirst for learning. So
it's a little different than so. I'll kind of tell a story here on myself. They have homework, they have stuff they have to do. So she came home one day last year, and I tried to help her. I was not a good algebra person. Geometry and regular math made sense to me. I was all good with that. But like right away, they were learning how to read in kindergarten. And I was like, okay, that's pretty impressive, because I remember learning letters in kindergarten and they're reading already. But she came home one day and said, Dad, I need help with homework. And I was like, okay, what do you need help with? And she goes, well, I need you to help me do my handwriting. We're doing cursive. And I was like, you need to go talk to your mom. Dad can't help you there. And it was like, all I could think back was, I didn't start to learn cursive till 3rd grade. And I can just remember the teacher being like, you need to be a doctor because your handwriting's awful. And so here's my kindergartner coming home, and she's already writing in cursive, and it's 10 times better than Dad's has ever been in his entire life. And as the year went on, it got better and better. And I was just floored, because I'm like, okay, I have some nieces and nephews and other people, kids that I know, that they have not even learned cursive. It's just been completely left out of the public school for a lot of years. And so it was like, okay, this is something that's kind of important. And so then, as other things happened, the wife the other day was showing flashcards, getting her ready to go back to school. And I'm over there looking at the flashcards, throwing up of addition. And I'm about the time I'm getting the answer in my head, MacKenzie's already spitting it out. And I'm like, okay, she is doing math as fast as Dad does math. And I'm actually pretty good at doing addition. But to watch that and see, but it's all the kids are the same way up there. So, I mean, they're going to learn a massive amount of stuff, even in kindergarten, that most of us probably didn't learn until we were 3rd or 4th grade. And so that was really neat to see. And one of the things that kind of struck me is their mind is so much like a sponge at this age that, man, the stuff you can throw at them, they're going to learn it and they're going to run with it. And she really seems to enjoy it. And so the other thing I struggled with was reading when I was younger, and she just picked it right up and loves to do it. And so to see that side of her, to see the imagination that's been fostered there and let to run is good for Dad. She's learned a lot of important stuff that she needs to know for life later on, but she's also being allowed to be a kid and expound and make her imagination work the way she needs it to work. And so that's been a good thing to see.
yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. No, those are great stories about, it sounds like she's learning a lot, but she's also really happy there. And so, right, it's not so much structure that's taking the joy away. She gets to be a kid too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been no crying because we had to go to school, and there's been no upset because I had homework. It was like she enjoyed the homework piece of it. It was never something that was super harsh and hard. It was just she wanted to learn, and she was excited about learning. And so I think that, for a kid that's like that, this place is perfect. And it's my 9-year-old seeing her now. She's kind of like, this kind of looks like it might be neat. And so I think she's kind of in the point now where she's just like, okay, MacKenzie's getting something that I don't have, but if it comes to the point she's ready to do it, then that's probably what we'll try to do. But it's just a matter of what the fit is, like I said earlier. And the fit with my 9-year-old, she doesn't like to sit still very long. And so having her sit in a desk for 8 hours a day may not be the best thing for her. And so she's getting homeschooled with grandma, who is a teacher, and she's allowed to kind of bounce around and do what she needs to do. But she's seeing how excited MacKenzie is, and it's like now she is like, well, maybe I'm missing out on something. So that's kind of neat to see too, that she's picked up on the fact that MacKenzie really enjoys what's going on. So
Yeah. And you mentioned the interaction MacKenzie had with the teenage student who was able to comfort her and help her feel more connected. And so the students go to chapel, right, as part of their education.
That's every morning they have a chapel. Lots of singing, devotionals, and things like that. And we're a big church family, and so we're in church every Wednesday night, every Sunday twice, and it was neat to see it, even though it is not our type of church that they go to. It's a different thing, and they try to do a very non-denominational piece. But it's good for MacKenzie because she has been my very godly child about a lot of things. Like I've watched her say to other people, hey, God wouldn't be happy if he saw you doing that at 4 and 5 years old. And so she just fit really well with how that all went down. But just more than that, and not even that they're sitting there hammering them with scripture, but it's the fact that they're teaching them to love other people and treat other people the way that they need to be treated. And I think that's huge at the end of the day, that these kids are learning not to be good citizens and to take care of each other and care for other people. And, to me, that's important. To MacKenzie, it's important. And, but it meant a ton to me when that young lady that's kind of taken her under her wing was like, hey, MacKenzie, we don't do things that way. We're not going to talk to people that way. The bullying that goes on in so many schools anymore, you don't hear about there. And when MacKenzie kind of got a little ugly, I mean, this girl pulled her aside and said, hey, we're not going to do that. And MacKenzie came straight home and said, you know what, I was talking to her today and she told me, don't do this. And so it meant a lot to MacKenzie that somebody would pull her aside and say that. And it just seemed like all the kids, it made me a little nervous, honestly, when I got there and realized, okay, we have from pre-K to 12th grade in one building at one time, but there's been no issues. It's been good for MacKenzie to see how older kids are supposed to act. It's set a good example across the board. And
I can understand you being nervous in your work. You see a lot of different sides of humanity, and including what teenagers are capable of. So the fact that they're at Grace Christian, there are teenagers who are part of the culture and they're transmitting good values and good culture to the younger kids. That's important.
Yes, very much so. And the families are the same. It's like when you go to a function, it's almost like going to a family reunion type deal. It's like everybody's talking to each other. There's not the little cliques and the other stuff that goes on. And so everybody you have a good relationship with everybody. You're able to just sit and talk, and it's been good for all of us, I think, at the end of the day, to kind of have that interaction with people when it's not something that normally happens. So.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, you shared so many great stories, but I'm going to kind of just throw it open. Are there any more stories that come to mind that you feel like would help people understand, like what it's like to be part of the Grace Christian School community, and what any like stories MacKenzie has told you in the car on the way home?
I mean, I think the biggest thing to me, the biggest takeaway that everybody ought to see is that the kid's happy. Like, most kids in school are not happy. They're not excited to go every day. And it's a jump up and be ready to go. Yesterday morning was the first day back, 4:30 in the morning. She's out of bed thinking it's time to go to school. And it's like, kid, go back to bed. Dad gets up at 4:30, but you're not supposed to get up for a little while yet. So she wasn't nervous. We didn't have the crying that we had with my oldest daughter. Was kind of like Dad. She didn't like to go. It was rough. And this one is just excited and fired up about it. They have a lot of fun stuff they do. They've had foam parties. They have snow cone people come over there. It's a very family friendly atmosphere. And I know, like with my oldest, I would sometimes go to the school and just felt like I really was not wanted there. And I always kind of felt like, well, they're trying to hide something. And here it's been the total and complete opposite. You go up there and the next thing you know, Mrs. Farmer's going to put you to work doing something. And, my wife had always kind of been hands off on a lot of that stuff. And all of a sudden she's doing PTA stuff and running around and doing all these different things. And so we just really kind of got drug into the family immediately. And it's been good for all of us. I think at the end of the day, it's kind of restored my faith in humanity in schools to see that there's something like this when I literally not very many years ago was like the only option really left is homeschool, to see that there's a place that they can go and they can learn the type of values that I want my kids to have. And with MacKenzie, it's all my girls have been raised, don't let people be picked on. That's a no-no in Dad's book. Like, we got to handle that. And, my oldest, we get in trouble a lot of times for telling kids, hey, quit doing that. Don't mess with them that way. And, mind your own business. But it's like, okay, you're not doing your job as the teachers, keeping them safe. Whereas at Grace, it's almost expected. Like, they expect MacKenzie to say something if somebody gets out of line, just like this older teenager had done to her when she got out of line. And so to see that side of society is good for me, good for her. Just makes me a whole lot more excited to see her as she grows up, knowing that this is kind of where we've started her out on the education level. And
it's the preparation that you want her to have, because you talked about like the advantage of homeschooling, right, is all the flexibility, but you may be almost too much protecting them from the world, right? Because you want them to learn how to function in the world, but you don't want to just throw them into some of the environments you've seen where the kids don't want to be there. There's bullying, teachers aren't really in control, it's not a safe environment.
Well, and it's the self-esteem piece that gets built. And I think that's one of the bigger pieces that a lot of times as parents, we don't even pick up on. But, my 9-year-old has always been sheltered around the house, done the homeschool route, and doesn't have some of the same self-esteem. And so sometimes she's scared of the dark, or she's scared of coyotes, or she's whatever. And MacKenzie is completely different. We just got back we went to Colorado in July, and the girl slept in a tent for about 7 days. And I was like, this is going to be chaos. But ended up being MacKenzie going, hey, this is fine. Dad's not going to let anything happen to us. And she was the one kind of talking to the older sister, trying to get things, hey, calm down, it's going to be okay. And so just to see that side, the self-esteem piece be built up, when so many times at public schools and stuff, it gets really torn up and beat down. And so that was, to me, is kind of the continuation point of like, this is why she needs to be here, is to see that that's being nurtured along the way. And she was already kind of my daredevil child, but it's really manifesting itself into, she's still kind of the daredevil, but she's picking up on the common sense. She's just the examples that are set and the people that are there to mentor just really are making her come into her own, where she's still my daredevil, but she's now has a little bit of sense to go along with it instead of what she was when she was 2 or 3 years old. And so I think that we put so much emphasis sometimes on what the curriculum is and what they're teaching in that manner, but we end up forgetting about some of the other stuff that's probably more important at the end of the day. And she's getting that. Plus we're doing it's the Abeka curriculum, and it's tough. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but she's thriving under it, and most of the other kids seem to be too. I don't see any kids that look like they just don't want to be there and aren't having fun. So, right. And that's a big burden off Dad to realize, okay, she has fun at school and it's not misery every day. So.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Stephen, you've covered so many aspects about Grace Christian School, but I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with the school. So, and I've got my banners ready. So, do you want to
Okay.
help explain to people like what they should do if they hopefully they're excited about this? They can read the blog post and they want to do a tour just like you and
Yeah.
Jackie did.
So yeah, just get a hold of them up there. They got a number there, which is the 210-265-8166. And then you can also email them at Grace, GRACECSTX@gmail.com. And they have a website, which is gracechristianschool-sa.com. But give them a call, shoot them an email. Miss Nikki or Daisy will take you and show you around. They're, like I said, they're back in session. They started Monday. So the kids are there. You can see kind of how it's going and how the kids act. And I think that's going to be the biggest selling point is go up there and talk to the people that run the place and see that they genuinely care about these kids and want to make sure that they get the best.
Mm-hmm. So, and just like you and your wife's experience, bring all the questions because they're ready to handle it.
Yeah, they are. And it was, I mean, I still am just floored that my kindergartner writes cursive. It was, to me, that was just a huge deal. And just to see the zest for wanting to learn is important to dad and to mom. And so it was, you don't see that very often with kids anymore. They don't want to be there. And these kids are excited to be there. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, Stephen, that's a great testimony about Grace Christian School. Thank you so much for the guest blog post. Thank you for joining me on Charter Moms Chats. And I know Jackie's in the Charter Moms group on Facebook, so she can, help answer folks' questions about Grace Christian School. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. You have a great day.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.